Let's take a look at the fire. We'll do two different examples. We're going to do one that's going to be a fire, like a basic one, a very simple one, and then we'll do a fire complex with lots of moving parts and pieces to it. The first fire, though, inside of our particles fire rollout, you'll notice that we have a bunch of textures and a bunch of images. We're going to use one which is going to be a flame. So the flame will be an animated one going across right here. And then we'll also use a glow, just to have a general glow around the fire to make it feel like it's a little bit brighter. And then we'll also have some smoke coming up from it. So we'll go ahead and start inside our hierarchy on the create particle system. You should be getting kind of used to it. This is kind of a very similar process and pattern for all the particles. We're going to start off with the labeling for it. We'll just call this fire, and actually we'll go ahead and label it with a fire, we'll do simple, so we'll underscore simple. Alright, let's go ahead and lower our particle curve. We'll go open up the renderer. And for this one, we're going to do the flames. So just left click and drag your flames material over to your material right there. So now you see the whole sheet being created right there. Alright, so if you remember, what that means is that two things. We want to make sure we do our sort mode, and we'll do the by distance. And then we'll also go up to our texture sheet and just click on the texture sheet right here. And this one, this is going to be how many are we doing per. So there's going to be 8 by 4. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's make sure we're actually looking at it right here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 8 across. Okay, so we'll do 8 by 4. There we go. So it'll actually give us the one image showing and playing through the animation. Now, we want to use for the cycles, we want it to actually repeat twice within that time frame. And then on the frame over time, let's double check, make sure our frame over time curve is set up right. We have it 0 to 32, and we could actually, instead of doing all the way up to 32 on the frames, let's increase it so that the frames over time is a little bit quicker right at the end. So we'll do about, we'll take it down to about 20 on this one, and go ahead and still keep a straight line. I'm just gonna right click on, let's see if we can right click on that one. We'll do left tangent as linear, and then just right click on this one and do right tangent as linear. We just have a nice straight line going across right there. Alright, go ahead and lower that back down. And now that we've got this one, let's go ahead and go back up to the top. And the duration on this, let's make it, instead of 5 seconds per duration and cycle, we'll just put this at about 2 seconds for each one. We'll make sure that it stays looping on it. And then inside of the options for through here, let's go ahead and start with the start lifetime, and we'll do a little bit of a random between two constants on it. So the start lifetime, we could say we'll start it at about a 0.5, and then we'll end it at a 1. Alright. So we'll have a little bit more of a flicker that'll kind of occur. Some will be short, some will be long. The speed, let's go ahead and get rid of speed completely. We'll just put this down to 0. There we go. And sometimes you may find yourself going straight to speed and setting it to 0 to start with, and taking your shape and setting it to 0, or taking the shape and turning it off. Either of those are fine, especially to try to get zero out the value, so you're looking at starting from scratch instead of starting with all those particles moving around. For the shape, this one we actually don't want a shape on it. We just want it to be a single fire piece. So for instance, like with this one, I'll go ahead and move this up so we're staring at the whole fire shape right here. So we have a nice little animation going on. Now this currently, when it comes to the emissions, this is actually doing 10, and we don't really need it to do 10 per second. Let's take it down. If we were to say, for instance, we did 1, you see how we have the 1 going? Well, let's take it up to about 3 and see how that looks. So now we've got a little bit more fire going. The flicker is just simply because of our, we could change the color over lifetime, so there's a little bit more of a fade, less than a pop. Alright, for the moment we've got that. How about we go back up into our settings here, and let's make sure we've got some of these other elements finished off. Our, let's see, start size. Start size works for this one. We could actually make, let's double check and see if we want a little bit bigger. Yeah, we'll go just a little bit bigger like that for it. So a 1.5 for start size. And then for the rotation, we'll go ahead and do a value between two constants. Now remember, we don't want to rotate this all over the place. We just want a little to the left and a little to the right. So I'm going to do a little to the left at about a -10 and a little to the right at 10. So now we'll have a little bit back and forth motion flickering. It's not going to be a whole lot. If you find that you really want it to be like a flame that's really bouncing around, then you could take this up to 20 or 30 for the negative and positive on rotation. Alright, after that point, we'll go ahead and take the gravity and let's move it up just a little. So we'll do a -0.1. Let's see if that's gonna, yeah, so that'll be pretty good. This can be, it still looks like it's growing upwards and then it stops. That should work out pretty good for us. And if you were to take this up, for instance, if you went upwards like that, you'll see that you get too far. You just want enough that it feels like it's growing. It's trying to leave the point, and then it kind of gets broken down from once it gets too far. Alright, so -0.1 there, and then we'll go ahead and do a world on this one in case you want to put it on the end of a stick and have it walk around the player, or if you want to have it connected to an object that's moving around. The emission for the max particles, we don't need 1,000. We could take this down to about 10. So it's going to emit every second, and then while it's emitting, it's only going to reach 10 as the max point for it. Alright, so let's go ahead and go down to our other options. We have a color over lifetime, which we're kind of normally using to fade the object smoothly in and out. So for this one, I'm just going to take from the left right here, we'll just drag our alpha down. Remember, you just left click on the ticks to select them. And then you can left click on the bar up top to choose for the alpha. And we'll take this one and move it somewhere around a 20, there we go, about a 20 range. And on this part, I'm going to take the alpha and take it actually all the way up to 255. So now we have a smoother entrance. It's got that nice fade in and up. And then let's go ahead and go over to the far right hand side over here. And instead of being white, let's go ahead and just have it, let's take this to black. Let me stay organized with it here. We'll do black on the edge. And then on this one, we'll set it to 75. And instead of being white though for the alpha, let's actually take this down, drop it to a little bit of a gray. So I'm going to go about a 128, about half gray right here. So if you notice, just kind of watch while you're dragging it. You're just looking for it to look like it's smooth instead of too much of a pop. Now it just feels like the flame's kind of bouncing around left and right instead of popping so much. Alright. We'll go ahead and close this out. We're not going to add a color to it. It's just simply to do the gradient over the lifetime for it. Alright. So if you've got that one set up in place, let's go to the size over lifetime. And size over lifetime, we'll just do a little bit of a change to it. So if you click on the bar right there, I'm going to turn this one off by left clicking on it. Let's go ahead and go into this one. The height of the bar, remember you can click inside of this little box and change the overall height. We're going to do 1.5 for our height right here. And the height, we'll go from the start lifetime, we'll start at 1.5, and then we'll just take this one down to about 1. Let's see, we'll go down to about a 1, looking at the little squares, maybe about a 1.2 to 1.3. Let's see how that looks. And I'm going to leave it where it's a low curve, and it grows up to the top curve. So we'll go ahead and go back to our simulate. There we go. So it's going to start big, and then start to get small. And remember, when I'm putting numbers in here, play with it. If you want to see what it looks like when you totally change the curve and have it go smaller and then bounce back up, you can see it happening right there. So when you start getting with the curves, feel free just to play around with those curves until you get a value that you like, but also that you feel comfortable with, and that you can change the shape very easy on how it's being controlled through it. Especially on the, like for instance with the size over lifetime curve, definitely works well. Alright, so we've got that one set up. We have our, the only other part that we're going to have to do on this one, and we'll come back to it, is that we'll actually spawn inside of our, let's see, we have our sub-emitters, we'll actually spawn the smoke and the glow and have them come from here so that when this is actually being created through our emissions, every time there's a new one created, we'll actually spawn the other ones to coincide with it. That way it feels more natural that when this one moves, the other ones are moving along with it. Alright, so that'll be the first part of our simplifier.